Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Atheist Experience. It's Sunday, April 17th, 2011. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Jen Peoples. Welcome back.
Thanks.
Well, it's been a little bit since we actually did one together.
I know.
I had to keep bowing out, and then
I know.
Then you and Tracy did a show, and I don't know.
Russell and I did a show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, where the hell have you been?
I decided I didn't like doing the show that much, and decided to go, fiddle around with other stuff. So it's good to be back, though. No, in all seriousness, this is a live public access television program sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin. For more information about the ACA, you can visit the website www.atheist-community.org. You can find a frequently asked questions page there, a calendar of events. And you can also email us. tv@atheist-community.org goes to myself, the co-hosts, some of the people behind the scenes as well. We can't possibly answer all the email that comes in, and this becomes apparent to me every single day.
Yeah.
As there's like 800 and something in my box now. But we do try to read all of them and take the feedback to heart. If you're emailing us to cut and paste a lengthy debate that you've had and you're seeking critiques and criticisms on how to improve it, that's a service that I'd love to be able to do, but you probably won't get an answer.
Yeah.
It's just a little too much to do this and then do everybody else's work too. Sometimes they get answers, so we'll see. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. You can go to nonprofitsradio.com for more information. That's PROPHETS. We were live yesterday. We will not be live next weekend because next weekend is the American Atheist National Convention. I'll be heading up there, I think, Thursday, and then doing the speakers dinner on Thursday. All of the regular events, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then speaking sometime Sunday afternoon, and won't be back until Monday. So
there's no show next week?
Well, there is a show next week, not a nonprofits.
Oh, nonprofits. I'm sorry.
There's an Atheist Experience next week. I won't be here, but it's Easter Sunday.
Yeah.
And Martin's going to be doing it. I'm not quite sure who's going to be on with Martin, but I'm sure they'll have plenty of fun and maybe even talk about the bunny and how they lay eggs and things like that.
Yeah.
It should be fun. So this is like episode 705. I've cut the announcements down a lot because we were down to about an hour or so, and I'm not going to waste a whole lot more time talking about announcements and events other than one other announcement about my schedule, and that is May 21st and May 22nd. I'll be in Oakland, California for the Regional Atheist Meetup sponsored by American Atheists. This was being dubbed the Rapture Ram, and it's because we're going to be there when the world's supposed to end. Saw another billboard on my drive in today. It's just having gone through this deal about trying to come up with the funds to put up a billboard.
Yeah.
I'm just amazed at how much money has been spent putting up billboards announcing that the world's going to end May 21st. I mean,
yeah.
We made a lot of progress up through the 19th century or so, and then we lost some ground to fundamentalists and McCarthy-era scares and things like that, and we're hopefully kind of gaining ground again where reason's going to prevail. But, I look back to the days when the people announcing that the world was going to be ending in a month or so wore the sandwich boards and had big shaggy beards and stood out there. They didn't have the money to put up billboards all over. I mean, just in Austin, you're talking probably $20,000, $30,000 for billboards. And we saw some when we went to Houston, and I've been getting emails from people who've seen them all over the country. So this is a big budget ad campaign.
Well, not like that, but back when they wore sandwich boards, people rightly regarded them as just crazy.
Yeah.
And now, because it's on a billboard, it's got this, veneer of respectability and authority.
So, I'll be there basically May 21st is the Saturday. We're going to be there, talking, having a lot of fun, and then, I don't know, probably getting trashed just in case the world ends. And then on May 22nd, we'll wake up all hungover and laugh about how it didn't. So if you're in the Oakland area or can be in the Oakland area, please, you can find the information online, also at the American Atheist website, I'm sure. There'll be a bunch of us down there. So.
And I'll be in Washington, D.C. that weekend, so
Are you pushing a button to usher in the end of the world at the secret atheist headquarters under D.C.?
Yeah, we're having a secret atheist meeting in D.C. It's that Secular Coalition for America.
Awesome.
Event. Yep, I'll be there.
The leadership conference.
That's
yeah.
right. Yes.
So anyway, I'm not going to waste any more time on announcements. I want to let Jen get to her stuff, and then we'll start taking calls.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a really quick one here. Did you know that it's actually Christians who are being bullied by these anti-bullying campaigns, like Safe Schools and Welcoming Schools,
No.
which are two anti-bullying campaigns?
I'm against that.
I know.
I'm against bullying
Yeah.
Christians or anybody else. So how are they being bullied?
Well, because they're not allowed to bully gay teenagers, therefore they're being, oppressed and victimized.
Oh.
Yeah. Focus on the Family has launched this anti-bullying campaign. They're calling, this actually is happened a few months ago, but they're calling their anti-bullying campaign True Tolerance. And they even have a plan. You should go to the True Tolerance website and take a look at it. Their plan, basically it reads like a legal contract, so I'm sure it's going to have a huge impact on fifth graders. But among the things they want to emphasize here is that their response to this, instead of addressing specifics of behavior that count as bullying, which really does resonate with fifth graders, their answer is, why not emphasize the things we have in common as Americans? And I'm quoting from them. For example, we can unite around the teachings of our founding fathers, in particular the principle that all men are created equal and that they are endowed with unalienable rights. So, yeah.
Okay.
Well, what's interesting about that is that they lift something that's out of the Declaration of Independence, this whole being endowed with unalienable rights. Kind of connects to something our very own Cynthia Dunbar from the Texas State Board of Education said just this past week. She admits that the conservatives on the Texas State Board of Education, which actually, that's probably a disservice to conservatives. They're right-wing activists.
Yeah.
Okay. She admits that they're using Texas school standards to offset what she calls the biblically illiterate society. And I agree with her on that point. People are biblically illiterate. I think that if they knew more about the Bible, they probably couldn't support it. But one of the things that she references is that they included in the new curriculum a requirement that students must learn about the laws of nature and nature's God, so that they will be taught that the laws of nature is the will of our Maker and because of the fallen state of man. And we have to have the laws of nature's God revealed through Holy Scripture. So you've got Focus on the Family, invoking a passage from the Declaration of Independence, and then Cynthia Dunbar invoking language from the Declaration and totally twisting the meaning of that passage. And in particular, the fact that these ideas came from the Age of Enlightenment. They didn't come from somebody's understanding of the Bible or Scripture or anything like that. And in fact, the Declaration of Independence was considered a pretty radical document of its time because it directly went against the divine right of kings, which is the right that monarchies claimed at that time, that basically their idea of God had set them on the throne, and therefore, they had a divine right to do what they will.
It's curious, we've got a constitution that, apart from saying there should be no religious tests for public office, and a little note in the date that was basically just the de facto standard for writing dates, doesn't mention God or religion at all.
Right.
And so they make this leap to the declarations of independence, which, by the way, is not a governing document.
Exactly.
Simply because that's the closest they can get to any proclamation that there is some God or divine being as a foundation for the United States, and then completely ignore the whole of the people, by the people, for the people, we
Exactly.
the people, all of these things that go into what really defined the secular nation that we're supposed to be living in.
Right, and the very fact that we've got some things within the U.S. Constitution, like Article 6, that basically deals with corruption of blood, and that flies directly in the face of this Christian view that whatever sins you commit, God's going to punish your descendants to the third and fourth generation. So, our concept of justice it prohibits us from basically forcing children to pay for the sins of their parents. Anyway, but I guess the point here is that if you are a right-wing activist and you want to keep people as dumb as possible, if you can get this into the curriculum, you can miseducate children and hope they never find out the truth.
Yeah.
And that way they'll keep voting for.
I like how they get to label whatever they want truth.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
We're the ones with true tolerance.
Yes, we've got true tolerance.
Yeah, we're tired of you taking away the sticks we used to beat people, and true tolerance would allow us to keep those sticks and use them.
That's right.
But
because they're just ceremonial sticks. They're not real sticks. Yeah.
But I don't know. There's a handful that would say that they're real sticks, and it's divine right that they're using to beat people with them. But you want to go ahead and start taking calls?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get to the calls.
We've got Luke from here in Austin. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm fine.
That's good. Well, our family goes to Austin Stone. Do you know this church?
Wow, we're getting some feedback. Yeah, I mean, I haven't been there yet, but we've had another individual call who called himself Mark. Is everybody at Stone Church named after one of the Gospels, by the way?
I'm sorry, I can't really hear you.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if this is loud or not. Can you hear me now?
It's a little bit better.
Sure, I was just making a joke because Mark had called previously and now Luke's calling, so I was wondering if everybody at Stone Church was named after.
Okay.
But no, I'm roughly familiar with it. One of the teaching pastors emailed me this week, and we're going to go to lunch at some point and talk about it. What's up?
Not very much. I just wanted to say that a lot of my friends have been watching the show, but some of them have been punished because they have really strict parents. You guys both went to church back when you were younger, right?
Yes.
I did, yeah.
Were your parents really strict about your beliefs?
No.
Mine were somewhat strict. I mean, it depends. You'd have to define it a little better for me to actually answer, but I mean, there were certain things, that were simply not tolerated.
Like, how did you guys treat other atheists?
Well, I don't think that I actually knew or met or interacted with any atheists when I was young.
Yeah, I didn't know any atheists when I was much younger.
I didn't recognize them as atheists. I never really ran up against them. I remember my mom talking about Madalyn Murray O'Hair and how she was this evil woman who was trying to destroy God's country. But generally, when we ran into people, they were, who weren't Christians, they were simply non-believers. The concept of an atheist meshing with this idea of non-belief just never really registered back then.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, one of the main beliefs we have is in hell. But at any point in time, did you ever have, like, a fear of it?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I mean, like, if this happens to be true, like, why would you want to take the risk to go to hell?
You're not going to go Pascal's wager on us, are you?
See, the thing is, you're right. If it happens to be true, I suppose I'm taking a risk. And I'm also taking a risk against every other religion's claims and every other religion's hells. So by what right do you determine that the one you're avoiding is the correct one to avoid? And by the way, as a matter of principle, believing something simply to avoid a negative consequence is, in my opinion, it could be reasonable. I mean, if somebody's got a gun aimed at my head and wants me to say something to avoid being shot in the head, I'll say it. It's not a big deal. But I don't actually mean it. It's an avoidance thing. But what I find kind of repugnant is that there are, most Christians don't tend to look at this as, I believe this so I won't go to hell, although I think that's one factor. They actually revere this as if this is a loving God saving them from the hell that he evidently created. So not only do you have this problem where you haven't determined which hell to avoid or which heaven to aspire to, you haven't set up any criteria by that, but just the mere statement that one should attempt to avoid the possibility of a hell and therefore change the way they live the one and only life we know we're going to get is something that I find absolutely absurd and immoral.
Well, I hope you guys all find Jesus, because I don't want you guys to go to hell. And John 14:19 said, "After a little while, the longer will see me, but you will see me, because I live. You will live also."
Sure.
God bless, and thank you very much.
That's it? Really?
That's it? That's all you're going to do?
You're just going to call in and throw in the towel and quote a Bible verse? Why should I believe your Bible verse?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it hasn't been disproven, has it?
Oh, so you believe everything that hasn't been disproven? Why aren't you a Muslim?
How I was raised, I guess.
So,
there you go.
So you believe everything that hasn't been disproven, and then you make exclusions for how you were raised. Do you think that's a reasonable way to go about finding out what's true and not true?
I guess it's not the best way.
Okay, so why do it?
Well, in general, I'm just afraid that I might go to hell, you know?
So that's why you believe?
That's part of it, yeah.
Okay.
When you say that, it's kind of a complicated situation, because you also said, I hope that you guys find Jesus so you avoid hell, etc. So you admit that you don't have a rational basis for your beliefs, and that's great. I'm glad that you're at least of the mind to say something like that. And you also admit that your primary reason for believing this is out of fear of a hell. And what I'd kind of like you to think about is, have you spent any time at all in fear that you might be sent to the Muslim hell or some other hell?
Well, I mean, I guess it's all kind of the same, I guess, but
it's not all kind of the same. They don't all have the same. They don't all have the same doctrines about what's going to happen after death, and they don't all have the same pathways to salvation. So if you take a look at all of the different religions, if your only reason for picking the one that you've got is that this is the way you were raised, why aren't you worried that you're wrong?
I guess that's a really good question. I'm definitely going to need to do some more research.
Okay. Well,
all right, thank you very much.
Do it and call back anytime you want.
All right, thanks a lot. God bless.
Sure, thanks. I love that it has to end with a God bless
I know.
as well. I don't know why it has to end with a God bless. I mean, it's not like I even sneezed or anything, but okay.
I told you what my son has told me that he requires me to say if he sneezes.
Yes.
Yes, it's his requirement is no. You're supposed to just say poor guy.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
Poor guy. Well, I'm glad we're getting calls from people, regardless of what church they're from or anything else. It's rare that we get people who are willing to have a conversation like that and actually acknowledge that they're believing something for no good reason. And I think it's one of the reasons why we hear so much lately from and about the Stone Church. So I'm even more looking forward to not only speaking with one of the pastors from there, which will happen in the next week or two, but we're also talking about going and attending a service there sometime in the near future. Because you've got people who legitimately would like to care about whether or not something's true, and they seem to be kind of stuck. They've accepted the first thing they came across, believe it, and they're compelled out of fear, and they haven't really bothered to sit down and think through things. And this is something that I can relate to, because for 20 some odd years I did pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know that mine was primarily motivated by a fear of hell, but that was definitely a factor.
Mm-hmm. Well, and when I was still a theist, I was actually confirmed into the Episcopal Church, which doesn't emphasize hell that much. Mm-hmm. And and even then, fear of hell was kind of a sticking point for a while. It took a little while to kind of break the indoctrination to get through it. And I wouldn't say that I had as much trouble breaking through it as most people, but I wasn't as thoroughly indoctrinated as a lot of people are.
Yeah, and in my case, it was just, this was kind of it's just the way things were. I mean, everybody around you believed it. Mm-hmm. Your parents, your grandparents, your extended family, the ministers, everybody you interacted with. Growing up, all of my close friends were pretty much in the same youth group at church. I mean, we had the largest graduating class of any public high school at the time, which was almost 1,000, and they split the school in half the year after that. And despite going to that big school and being on student council and being involved in different activities and playing soccer and things like that, still the overwhelming core of my friends were all in that church youth group. Some of them I still have contact with today. Some of them are still amongst my best friends, despite the fact that we don't believe the same thing. And I look forward to seeing some of them at the wedding in October.
Yeah.
But this insular kind of setup that is arranged and really, it's not even, you didn't even think about it. And I don't know that it was necessarily intentional. It's just you gravitate towards the people who are like-minded, and you spend time. When I'm in church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Monday night, sometimes Tuesday, Wednesday night, Thursday night youth group, and then special things on the weekends, those are the people that I hang out with. Those are the people you only want to hang out with.
Yeah.
And it took leaving home and going in the Navy for 8 years or so to where I was separated from that constant reinforcement and exposed to a much more diverse range of views and on religion and other subjects before I could kind of break down some of the, just assumptions that I made. It never, I was reasonably, I didn't get smarter or more intelligent when I became an atheist. I was a smart kid and, was interested in science and was skeptical about this and that, but I never applied. It never even occurred to me to ask the questions. And that's why, I'm glad we got to talk to Luke, because it was kind of clear it has never occurred to Luke to ask those simple questions.
Yeah.
It begins with this presupposition that I'm right, and then we go looking for all the evidence to support it, if we even bother to go that far. But.
Yep.
All right, we got John in Lake Orion. Hello, John.
Hey, I'm a little. So,
Okay.
that's me. That was familiar with.
John, we can't understand you. There's some kind of feedback. So if you're watching like on the stream or whatever, you're going to turn that down.
No, I have that. Hello?
Hello.
Hello.
So Exodus chapter 20 gives the commandments that we're familiar with.
I'm sorry, I'm still having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, I guess it's my phone. So the commandments that we're familiar with are in Exodus chapter 20.
Sure.
Okay.
But these aren't the commandments that were written on stone tablets, and they weren't called the Ten Commandments in the Bible.
Yeah.
And when in Exodus chapter 34, God gives Moses 2 new tablets that supposedly have the same commandments that were on before.
Yeah.
So, I'm just wondering, how does this happen?
How does what happen?
How do they get the command? The commandments in chapter 34 are just completely different from the commandments in Exodus chapter 20.
Sure. Well, are you asking how does nobody notice this? Because that's a fairly decent question, and a lot of people have noticed it. But it's the big book of multiple choice, and also supported by tons and tons of rationalizations. If you begin with the presupposition that this is inspired directly by a perfect being, then anything that appears to be a contradiction or a problem is merely the result of your inability to understand at the level of this God, and therefore there must be a reason, and now we've begun with the conclusion that there's a way to reconcile it, and then we find a way. And there's a number of different things. There's no 10, there's 613. There's no real good explanation as for why the later ones would be different. Sometimes it's down to, these are the moral laws versus these are the sacrificial laws, or the laws that govern the daily interactions of people and things like that. I'm not aware of any good reason. It's just not a point that really carries any weight in discussions, because tradition has it that the 10 Commandments that we tend to recognize, they're the 10. I find it's a lot more valid to point out that, that the Protestant 10, the Jewish 10, and the Catholic 10 are all different too, despite the fact that they supposedly come from the exact same passage. Go pick up a Catholic Bible and try to find the "Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images." It doesn't exist. It's been completely excised even from that same passage. And the 10th commandment about coveting has been split into 2 commandments. Or I guess if you're a Catholic, you could say that the 9th and 10th commandments have been combined, and a new one has been added that's specifically in opposition to, the Vatican, I guess, because there's a ton of graven images at the Vatican.
Thanks.
Sure, thanks, John.
All right, thanks.
Got Chris in Greenville. How are you?
Hey, man, really good to see you.
You're kind of breaking up a little bit, so if you can get to the question, that'd be great.
Okay. Like you, I a church. I put. All right. Does this sound any better?
I don't know. Start over. They'll see.
Like you, Matt, I grew up in a Christian household. My uncle's a minister. But by the time I was 12, I had figured out that, the Bible was full of shit. And over the years, I had a lot of arguments with Christians. And the one that I've never got a good argument from a Christian for is this. And since you talk to so many theists that call in, bring this up sometime and ask them. It says in the Bible that there's no way to get to heaven except through Jesus. And my biggest argument has always been, what about all the people that lived all over the world after Jesus was born, but before Christian missionaries got there to spread the word of Christ?
Sure.
So were all the natives of South America, North America, Australia, lots of Asia, just condemned to hell for 1,500 years?
No. Well,
It depends on who
knows?
you ask.
This is a serious problem in theology that's been addressed by pretty much every religion in a number of different ways. It's the reason that the Catholics have things like purgatory and used to have something called limbo. But there's also passages, and I'm not going to remember any of them off the top of my head, that talk about. Well, the Catholic Church has this tradition of the harrowing of hell, where Jesus essentially goes down to purgatory to release all the people who had died. There's also references, I believe in Revelation, but I'll have to double check, where the people who died never having heard are not in hell, they're just dead, and then are going to be, in a really weird sense, raised up, and I suppose given the choice of whether they want to go and follow Jesus and go on to heaven, or whether they just prefer to go straight to hell. There's no good answer. The doctrine isn't clear, and it's because the people who were writing this original message, the original kind of path to salvation, which, by the way, differs among Christian doctrines depending on which passages they want to rely on, didn't even think about this problem. It was, hey, we're preaching a message that is relevant to everybody else. And by the way, some people have resolved this by saying that anybody who dies never having heard falls into one of a couple categories. Number one, they're going straight to hell because God wrote his message on everybody's heart and they could have recognized this. And number two, that they're roughly the equivalent of children who haven't come of age and are therefore spirited off to heaven or put in some waiting state. There's no good answer. And when pressed, I think anybody who cares enough will just write it off to, we don't know, but God's good and we can trust that God's got this all worked out. So this isn't something we should worry about.
And I've actually heard Christians argue that because they've already accepted that God is all good, that he wouldn't condemn people to hell if they had never heard, that Jesus is the only way. And so they're just going to trust that these people are going to heaven if they haven't heard.
Well, that's exactly it. I've never heard a good answer. The one that Matt just said, that God writes it in people's heart. I've heard a kind of a variation on that, but to me it just comes down to, we don't know God is magic, so He's going to fix it.
Yeah.
But it's retarded, because it says in the Bible, plain as day, that the only way to get to heaven is through Jesus.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just one more example out of the many examples of how the Bible's full of shit. But that one, to me, always just jumped out at me, because even as a young child, I thought, what about all the people that lived without ever hearing about Jesus?
Yep.
Anyway, that's a question that I've never gotten a good answer to, and since you talk to so many theists, maybe the next time you talk to some of these crazy ministers that you talk to, they can give you a better answer.
Yeah, you'll never get a good answer to that, because it's not something that's explicitly addressed. And anything that isn't explicitly addressed means it's subject to everybody's personal opinions and whatever it is that they think God has happened to whisper to them specifically. So,
well, thanks for your show, Matt. I appreciate what you guys do. I only discovered it recently on YouTube, some clips, and then I started watching your the archive of your shows. And it's a great program you guys do.
well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
We appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
Bye, Chris. By the way, for the people who've emailed to let us know that Google Video is going to be taking them down, don't worry about it. Everything's archived. There's already a plan in the works. And for the people letting us know that YouTube now has a 4-hour limit available, and that we could actually post entire episodes, we're already aware of that too, and there's plans to try to work that direction as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, as soon as things get kind of fleshed out, we'll make announcements here with additional information about how and where you can watch stuff. If you're only seeing clips on YouTube, you probably won't hear me say this, but you can go to atheist-experience.com and click on archive, and most of the older shows are there in the archive as well. As a reminder, since we're like halfway through the show, we're going to dinner after the show's over at El Arroyo. They'll put the address up on the screen. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to come to any of our events, including this. You don't have to be a member, but if you come down to preach, proselytize, or provoke, please don't. Just send us an email or try to call in. And since we got full lines, I'll just try and keep on going. We've got Alan.
Yes, I'm here.
How are
Hi.
you?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello. Hi, nice to be on your show.
Okay.
Yeah? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes, we're here. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm from Israel. I'm 29 years, and I wanted to talk today. Today is the evening of Passover here in Israel, and I wanted to make a comment and ask a question to you guys about something that I never saw in any debate between an atheist and a believer. That the atheist side never uses the Bible to show the believer how wrong his belief is. And what I mean by that is, for example, a couple of shows ago that you talked with Ray Comfort, and you try to use reason, logic, scientific facts, and data to show him that his belief is unfounded. With little success, if any at all. What I believe that you should have done is to show him by his own beliefs that he is was actually a blasphemer. He says he believes, for example, in the Ten Commandments, but if you read the Ten Commandments, you see that he doesn't follow the first 5. And I'm not really talking in the New Testament, but if I remember correctly, in Matthew 5, in the Gospel and the
Sermon on the Mount.
On the Mount, yes, Jesus supposedly said that until the last day of earth and the sky, any comma and anything the prophet says in the laws that were written will be valid. So actually, the passage actually says that all the Old Testament is still valid to a Christian, and yet no Christian celebrates for the keep the Sabbath or keep kosher, something that God supposedly said and commanded. Because today is the evening of Passover, something that I noticed in Christians, that one of the big things is Jesus' Last Supper. So supposedly, in the tradition, it was a Passover dinner.
Yeah, it was a Seder.
Sorry?
It's the Passover Seder, yes.
Yes. So supposedly Jesus, he was Jewish and knew that was his last meal. Decided to keep his Jewish beliefs to the very end and celebrate the Passover meal. And instead of imitating what Jesus said or living the life that Jesus lived as an example, they changed the Passover into a rabbit with eggs and chocolate. And so I don't understand it. And those kind of examples of using the Bible.
There's a whole lot of New Testament doctrine that you're probably just not familiar with. And the reason that these arguments don't work, and I don't usually waste any time on them, is because within Christianity there is the idea that when Jesus was crucified, that put an end to all of the old sacrificial laws. Okay? And when he says that, not a jot or, until all of this has come to fruition, not a jot or tittle of the law will be changed, they believe that coming to fruition came with the resurrection of Jesus, putting an end to the sacrificial laws and leaving only the moral laws. And so you get into this nitpicky thing. By the way, there's also, Jesus was specifically asked what one has to do to get to heaven, and he doesn't say, believe in me and, blah, blah, blah. What he says is keep the commandments. And then they specifically ask him which ones, and he specifically lists a couple, not all of them, which is given the impression that they're not all equally relevant with regard to your salvation. And it also has been made, the point's been made that the entire purpose is to show that nobody can possibly keep the commandments, and thus the need for Jesus. So there's about 1 million different apologist responses to the argument that you're proposing we make. I don't find any of them satisfactory, but the argument that you're making doesn't faze a single Christian and has no impact at all, so I don't bother making it.
Okay. Thanks for your answer.
I wish it did. I wish it did. It would be nice to point out, the obvious things like that about, hey, Jesus said, keep the commandments, so why aren't you keeping them? Well, I'm only keeping these. Well, it's not specific enough. And when you can go through and interpret whatever you want, and in a new world where, for example, with Protestantism, where it's about a personal relationship, and evidently God can talk to anybody and tell them whatever they want, which is how you end up with thousands of different denominations, you're not going to convince a true believer that they're doing something wrong by not. I will point out, you mentioned an objection to like Easter Bunny type stuff. There are a lot of Christian denominations that will have nothing to do with that. That is an abomination. There's also some who won't celebrate Christmas and other things. So it's kind of hit or miss as to what you find.
All right. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you for the show.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
I don't know if this is actually updated or not.
I think let's see. Yeah, the first column there, I think we're up to line 3 now.
Yeah. We got Jonathan in Odessa. How are you?
How's it going, sir?
Good.
Hi.
I wanted to call in and ask a question. I've kind of theorized myself. I found your show a couple of weeks ago and really started thinking into it. And I've always seen religion as kind of a way to explain what we don't know. And I think that humans are kind of afraid of what we don't know or what we can't understand. And so, religion is their crutch. When you die, I'll take care of you, just give me some money. And I'm wondering if you think maybe some atheists, this wouldn't apply to all, of course, are maybe afraid of having to pay for what they have done in some way, and that's why they are atheists. Kind of like when your parents tell you, no, there's really no monster in the closet whenever you're a kid,
So you think atheists are atheists because we don't want to pay for something we've gotten?
Not all, of course, only some. Just like
I don't know.
Christians are different.
I don't know of any atheists who are atheists because of that.
I don't know. Maybe you could find somebody who identifies as an atheist who doesn't, have. I mean, there are plenty of people who probably identify as atheists who don't have a rational basis for it.
Yeah.
They're not aware of. I don't know that of anybody who would be of the position that I know I'm a sinner, so I'm going to try to, I'm going to claim that I don't believe it so that I can try and avoid paying for it. I mean, there's a level of cognitive dissonance there that I think, I mean, certainly it exists. We see it all the time, but I haven't met anybody that I would think is in that position.
I think it's a common Christian claim that atheists, as atheists, we really do know that God exists. We're just, we just want to sin. So.
Yeah, I've heard the argument all the time that we just want to go around sinning and stuff. Yeah.
And I'm a fan of quite many things that they would call sin.
Yeah.
I really am. I find it patently absurd that they want to label some things which are not only perfectly normal, but where there's nobody harmed by this, and they want to label it as sin. To me, sin is a completely vapid concept. That is just the idea that you could do, or in many cases think something that would do some injury to a supreme being is absurd. What we identify as right or wrong, or good and evil, is in how we interact with each other. It has nothing to do, if I'm nice to Jen, the only thing that I care about is that I'm nice to Jen. If I'm not, then that's something that I need to correct with Jen. It doesn't matter if there's some third party out there who gets offended, whether it's a God or not, that I wasn't nice to Jen. Only making reparations at this level, it even matters. I mean, it's nice. For example, there's lots of examples where people owe somebody money. Okay, I owe the cable company money for the bill. It's nice if somebody comes in and pays the bill. That shows why that kind of analogy doesn't quite work out. But if I've committed a crime, nobody else is going to be able to come in and serve my jail time. There's things have to be resolved at that level, and the idea that there's somebody out there who something I've said or done is so injurious that it makes me a bad person, and quite frankly, I don't give a damn what they think anyway. I mean, if there is a God out there, sure, I'd love to know it. It'd be interesting and potentially useful information. But if there's a God out there who doesn't like me because of things that I've done that he thinks are bad that I don't, couldn't care less. I mean,
on a side note, y'all were talking about the True Tolerance website, and I have a bad habit whenever y'all talk about something, I like to use my magical Google box. And I pulled up one of their links, and it kind of goes back to the whole fear of what we don't understand. I'm reading through one of their articles, and there's a lot of stuff, if you will, in there about how accepting homosexuality in schools is basically attempting to indoctrinate our children with homosexuality, as if they think it's some kind of disease. I don't know if maybe y'all could expand on this or something and kind of put some more information about that out there. I mean, it's certainly not contagious or anything, and it's certainly not going to have any negative effect on anyone else, so long as, if you're not a homosexual, then it really shouldn't matter to you who is. You don't have anything to worry about,
there's that whole website, there's a lot of fear that that gays are recruiting people in schools, and they go on and on about some books that they're really just little cartoon books that teach young kids about the different types of family structures. One of them is called Who's in a Family? And they go on and on about how awful this is, and it's presenting, homosexuality as if it's just perfectly normal and all this stuff. And I have a copy of that book. And it's very age appropriate. You can give it to a young kid. There's nothing in there about sex or anything like that. It's just about different kinds of families. And it's not just gay families. It's kids who live with, just a mother or just a father or grandparents or, kids that are adopted or whatever. It's a very age appropriate book. And I just find it amazing that they have to take a book that's so innocuous and twist it into something really harmful in order to make a point. They're really just lying about the content of this book and really about what these programs are all about. Because the bottom line is that there's been an awful lot of kids that have committed suicide as a result of the bullying they've experienced. And a lot of those kids are gay. And a lot of them come from families just like, the focus on the family people are advocating. They're hardline theist families, mostly Christian. They're telling their kids homosexuality is bad. If you're gay, you're bad by definition. And they're sending this awful message to their kids, and their kids at some point realize that there's nothing they can do to change this, and so their solution is to kill themselves. And so that's what's prompted this, It Gets Better campaign and stuff like that, so that kids know, you got to survive your teenage years, and then you're going to get away from your parents. You're going to go someplace and have a really awesome life. So, don't kill yourself before you actually get a chance to experience that. And I will say on another note about teaching young children about gay families. My partner and I have a young son, and for him, having two moms is perfectly normal, and for his schoolmates, that's not even an unusual thing. We've got kids in his class who have a single mom. We don't have any single dads in there, but I have a couple of friends who are single dads, and so it's not something that is foreign to these kids. And as long as you don't indoctrinate them to hate people or to look down on other family structures early on, they don't ever pick this up. And so I think that the religious right is they're the ones doing their kids a disservice, because they're indoctrinating them with this hate and fear before they're able to reason their way through it. So they end up as teenagers and they hate and fear people they don't understand without even knowing why.
Right. One other thing that I did see on YouTube was a Christian warning to children about atheists, and it's basically like this flyer that says, this person's an atheist, and it has him saying a little quote or something about how he's just going to go inside and do nothing because he doesn't believe. And at the bottom of it, it says, if you see an atheist, turn and walk away, because they're going to try and do all these horrible things, and they're going to try to teach you things that are against God, and they're all this. And it takes an adult to know how to handle these situations. So just turn and run away. And then the funny thing is, the picture of the atheist is a goat. It's not even a human.
Yeah, Jonathan, we're having problems with the phone, so that's why you couldn't hear me actually interrupting.
I'm sorry?
We're having problems with the phones, which is why you couldn't hear me interrupting. I knew.
Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah.
You're sure you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, we were having problems with the phones, which is why you couldn't hear me interrupting. I knew what this was as soon as you started talking about it. It's not real. It's a parody. It's from Landover Baptist. So, Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes, the Billy Goat atheist character is a staple at Landover Baptist, which is a parody site. And that's one of the problems. I mean, it doesn't make it any less real. I saw a Facebook post, which for all I can tell is a Poe, but it ended up being cut and pasted and posted on a YouTube video, which is 4 reasons why you shouldn't date or be friends with an atheist. And it's got, it's basically, it posts a Bible verse and then talks about how atheists are just immoral people who will rape you. And in this thing was posted by a woman, and all the atheists are men. And so it's always he. So I was, which isn't me laughing, which is kind of appropriate. But you see a lot of that. You don't know how much of it's real. The thing is, the inability to distinguish between what's real and what's not in this realm testifies to just how absolutely crazy some people's beliefs are, and not just the fact that they're crazy, but that they are held by a sufficient number of people and so prevalent in the popular mindset that you can't tell the difference quite often between a real hater and somebody just parodying them. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate y'all's time, and I appreciate what y'all are doing, educating people.
Thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate it.
About different things. Y'all have a good.
Thanks.
Okay. We've got. Oh, I'm going to go to this one, just because there's like 8 minutes or 7 minutes left in the show. John in Greenville, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. How you doing? So, what's you wanted to talk about?
Well, what I want to talk about is that
I live here in South Carolina, and as you know, I'm in the Bible Belt, and it's very hard to get support from friends and family. Since I'm becoming an atheist, I've been studying for many months about religion, and I'm not getting much from it. And I could say that I'm becoming an atheist, but that position is making me have some discussion with family members, friends at work, and I can see that they're really looking at me in a different way. And my question to you pretty much would be, how did you, that I know that you was a theist before, you become an atheist, and how you dealt with that transition? And I've been asking a lot of people, oh, you got to make it smooth. You cannot offend them because they feel offended by anything. That I understand, but bottom line is, I'm not going to change their minds. And how can we live together without being discriminated? Because that's what's happening to me right now.
Yeah. I don't know. You want to go first?
Well, I guess first thing, how did I become an atheist? It was not a particularly easy route, and I mean, we're short on time here, so I can't go through the whole thing, but basically I had a conversation with a theist that caused me to actually start reading the Bible for the first time. And I had many follow-up conversations with other theists and realized that the questions I had, I didn't get good answers. And it wasn't that I got the answer I didn't want to hear, it's that the answers made no sense. They were just ridiculous. And so that caused me to start investigating further. And it was sort of a long process of sort of peeling away the reasons for belief until at some point it was just there's no reason for me to continue believing. Now, as far as transitioning to atheism, it was once I rejected Christianity, it was I don't know. I don't think I had a particularly difficult transition after that, but I was in the military at the time this was going on, and so that's a very it's infested with fundamentalists. So telling somebody that you're not going to participate in their church service is a little difficult sometimes, especially if it's your commanding officer. But
I tell you what, John, this is something we've talked about a lot, and it's an important subject because we've talked to people before and said, don't come out if you think your life or your well-being or your happiness or anything like that is going to be negatively impacted. And these sorts of transitions are often difficult, as was the case for me a little bit. Although I was separated by distance from my family and didn't have to interact, and things have settled down. In my fiance's case, hopefully one of these days we'll get her on the show to talk about that type of thing. Here's what because we're running short on time and there's one more call to get to, and I don't want to diminish the importance of this. There's just no way we can give you a good enough answer in 2 or 3 minutes. Why don't you go ahead and email tv@atheist-community.org, and I will be happy. Just put in the subject line AETV, and I will be happy to try and get you as much information as I can, because it's one of those things that, this is the whole reason for, why we talk about what we talk about, which is the difficulty of transitioning and dealing with people once they don't accept who you are. It can affect your job, your relationships, from marriages and relationship with kids right up to extended family, and no two situations are the same. So
thank you for saying that. That's the reason why I called the show, because I've been researching a lot. I've been watching the videos, the previous shows that you guys had, and I did not find anybody asking this question that I'm asking today. How can you make that transition? It's so imperative that you be objective on what you believe, but still you cannot offend your boss, your family members, your mother-in-law, because then you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's not easy as it sounds. Everybody
it is not.
Be yourself, but hey,
you're not on even footing.
And you see.
You're not on even footing. You have to tread on eggshells to avoid offending them, yet they can be as offending and insulting and condescending as they want because they are convinced that they are right and you are immoral. It is,
Thank you.
it is one of the most asinine and ridiculous things out there. And what it does is it encourages division between families where somebody gets to take this pretentious, self-righteous standpoint and make somebody else feel like crap and excluded, and then pretend that they're the victim. I've seen this in relationships with people close to me where, oh, you've completely broken our heart because now you're an atheist. Excuse me changing my mind about my view on something, I'm sorry if that broke your heart, but that's not my fault. You know what broke my heart? When you were so self-centered and ignorant as to exclude me because I don't believe the same crap you believe. That breaks my heart. That is offensive. Not the fact that we believe different things. That is the problem.
Well, and it's the same attitude that allows them to claim to be victims when they're confronted with an anti-bullying message. Yeah. That somehow telling them you're not allowed to bully the gay kids in school anymore is somehow victimizing them and infringing on their rights.
Correct.
So,
yeah. And on that note, yeah, just drop me an email. We'll talk about it some more offline, and hopefully we can get you to maybe even call in earlier in the show when there's not like 45 seconds left. So.
Sure. Thank you for what you both do, and I'm sure there's a lot of people there already got a lot of important information from you guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, John. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, this is Mark. I talked to you before.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's only like 30 seconds left in the show. So if you want to, you got like 10 seconds, and then I'll put you on hold, and you can talk to me after the show if you want.
After the show?
Sure, I can stay on the line after the show.
Okay.
Cool. Well, that burned up your 10 seconds. I'll put you on hold. We'll get right back to you after the show's over. As a reminder, there will be a show next Sunday here with Martin and I don't know who, but there won't be a Nonprofits next week as I'll be out of town at the American Atheist Convention. Thanks everybody who tuned in this week, and we're trying to do the most with this shortened format, and it doesn't always work out, but you can visit the website www.atheist-community.org for more information, and you can email tv@atheist-community. Don't forget that after the program's over, we'll be going to El Arroyo at 5th Street. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to come down and join us. And enjoy your Easter. Sorry I can't be here.
yeah. Actually, if we want to, I was going to say if we want to pick up Anthony.
Hey, Mark.
Hi, Matt. I wanted to talk about values. Last time I called, I talked about beliefs, and I don't think you share a lot of our beliefs.
There I agree.
We have an affirmation of faith and values, and the faith is the Bible is the Word of God. You don't believe that, right?
Correct.
There is one true and living God who exists in three persons, God the Father, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. Did you believe that before?
Sure, I used to believe it, don't believe it.
God created all things for His glory.
Yeah, don't believe
You
that.
don't believe in God or God made anything?
Yeah, I'm not even sure I believe this is actually Mark.
This is Mark. I talked to you before.
Well, okay, everybody knows that, and anybody can, try to fake what you're saying. How do I know it's Mark?
Well, I go to the Austin Stone Church.
Sure, you said that every time you called in.
What do you want to know?
I don't know. I don't have any way of telling. So, I mean, what is it you wanted to address?
Well, we have values too.
Sure.
an authentic and intimate relationship with God.
Hey, Mark, do you have any original thoughts, or are you just going to keep reading me what your church says?
Well, I just wanted to know what values you believe.
Well, there's lots of things that I value. Love, happiness, health, those types of things. I've given an entire talk on the superiority of secular morality and how you can begin with very, very simple beginnings and establish values that build up to a more complicated moral system.
What about submission to the God of the Bible?
Why would you even ask something so silly? Why would I believe to? Why would I have a value that has me submit to something I don't believe in? You know what else? I won't submit to anything in the sense that you're talking about it.
Well, last time I talked to Tracy, she said God was just like Santa Claus.
Sure.
Yep.
From our point of view, I even go one further. We've compared God and other supernatural claims that aren't supported by evidence. We've compared them to Santa Claus, leprechauns, all kinds of things. And I'll go a step further and say that leprechauns are, by definition, as are most cryptozoic things, or cryptozoological things, more plausible than your God, simply because they are less powerful. It's more likely that there's a magical fairy out there who can do some things than that there's a magical transcendent being who can do anything. Now, I think they're both absurdly implausible, but if we're going to compare the two, fairies win. You don't believe in fairies, do you?
No.
So why do you...
No one believes in that.
Well, yes, actually, there are people who believe in that kind of thing. And the Cottingley fairies hoax demonstrated this quite nicely when even Sir Arthur Conan Doyle believed that he had evidence of fairies. So your claim that nobody believes it not only is wrong, but it's irrelevant. What difference does it make if somebody believes it? I asked whether or not you believed it, and you said no. Now, how is it you can say no, you don't believe something that's more plausible than God, yet still believe in God?
Well, there's no Bible for fairies. There's no religion for fairies.
So what? Why is the Bible relevant? I mean, there's a Quran. You don't believe in Allah, do you?
No.
Okay, so can we agree at least that the Bible's irrelevant to whether or not there is a God? I mean...
Well, a lot of people read the Bible at my church. We just read this morning.
Okay. What'd you read this morning?
We read sermons. This time it was about heaven.
Okay. And so a lot of people read it, and you think that's enough to say that it's worth believing? Because a lot of people have read Harry Potter.
Yeah, but you believed it too, so are you...
Yes, I did.
Are you admitting that you're dumb too?
No, and I'm not saying you're dumb. I'm saying that I used to believe it, and then when I investigated why I believed it, I found that I didn't have any good reason to believe it.
And why do you think you believed it for 20 years?
Because I was wrong. I did not realize that I didn't have a good reason, and as soon as I did realize that, I stopped believing. The difference is that when you come up against a wall in trying to prevent some reason for you to believe it, you just stop thinking. You don't stop believing. I was wrong. That doesn't mean I was any more stupid. Was I dumber with regard to the truth of biblical things? You bet. Was I an idiot with regard to whether or not a God exists? Yes. But that doesn't change who I am. Being wrong about something, or being stupid in one area, or being uninformed in an area, or dumb, or whatever label you want to put on it, doesn't mean that you or I as a person is completely stupid. I'm dumb. I am an idiot about a great many things, including, as we've seen in the last week or so, finances. I'm a moron when it comes to investing and managing my money in a reasonable way. It's something that I've always had to deal with. But does that mean I'm an idiot across the board? Of course not. But I do at least recognize that I have this issue, and so I'm getting help with it.
Well,
Mark, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Why do you believe?
Well, I think maybe, like last time I talked to Tracy, she said she was indoctrinated And
Okay.
I don't know, like, what... I don't know exactly what indoctrination means, but...
It means you were brought up in an environment that
Yeah.
encouraged a belief without evidence to support it.
Right, but when parents indoctrinate their kids for Santa Claus, kids don't believe it anymore, but they still believe in God.
But the difference is that at some point the kids realize that Santa Claus doesn't make sense, and at that point parents stop reinforcing that belief. Or in the case of my kid, he never believed in Santa Claus.
So you mean if we stop reinforcing this belief, then we'll stop believing it?
Yes.
Yes.
You think if people stop going to church, they'll stop believing it?
No.
No, I think if parents stop reinforcing these beliefs, stop teaching their kids that this is literally true, then yeah, people will stop believing it.
You're confusing the scope of this. On an individual level, there's no guarantee that any person who stops going to church is going to stop believing. But I will say that the people who escape and avoid the constant reinforcement and constantly being surrounded by people who believe that stuff, those people are more likely to stop believing. That's just a demonstrable fact. It's the reason why groups like the American Family Association are worried about kids who go off to college, because the number of college students who abandon their religious beliefs within the first couple of years is staggering. And it's the reason why you and some others are worried about youth in your church who are watching this program and getting ideas. Because on some level, and I know this is insulting and I apologize, but we've had a number of conversations, and whenever you've been asked why you believe something, you have yet to give anything other than because a pastor said so or because a sermon said so. You haven't expressed any actual reason on your own, any thought behind what your beliefs are. And when I think, no matter how insulting this is, that you are aware on some level that you have no good reason for your beliefs and you're worried that nobody actually does, otherwise you would not have any concern at all about whether or not a kid is exposed to additional information. Because I'm not sitting here in this chair on the show asserting that your beliefs are false. I'm simply saying that your beliefs have not met their burden of proof, that you guys haven't been able to meet the standards of evidence that any reasonable claim should be. There's absolutely nothing objectionable about that. It's true. You guys wouldn't object to this sort of comment with regard to any other claim. If I said that Bigfoot hadn't met its claims, you'd be okay with that, and the same thing with fairies. But because it's something about something you believe, you're going to object to it. And I think that this betrays your own doubts about what you believe. And all I'm saying is that's not a bad thing. Embrace it. Don't be afraid of it, because if it's true, if your beliefs are true, the truth has absolutely nothing to fear from investigation. If something is true, the more you investigate it, the more brightly the light should shine and expose that truth. And
you have nothing to hide, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you were a Christian, what would you say if I said, "What's your reason?"
My reason at the time for why I was a Christian?
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have given a good answer. I probably
So you would have been just like me.
Yes.
Yes.
So you're being hypocritical.
No, how am I being hypocritical? I am encouraging you to take, I've already said I was in the same position you were in, Mark. I'm not being hypocritical. I am encouraging you to take the steps that I took and embrace your critical thinking skills and to foster your critical thinking skills so that you have a good understanding of what sort of evidence you need. What have I said that's hypocritical?
Well, you just said you don't have a reason, but you didn't have a reason either.
Right.
Exactly.
And
that was what was wrong with it.
Dumb. That it was unreasonable to believe something. And as soon as I realized that I didn't have a good reason, I stopped believing.
Well, okay. I know I'm on your side on a few things. Like, a lot of people at my church say, like, if the Bible says if you're a man and you have sex with another man, that's an abomination.
Yep.
So I don't like that. I know that that's not Christian, because he said you should love your neighbor. You know, some things in the Bible are good, like you should love your neighbor, and some things like...
Okay, how do you go about deciding what in the Bible's right and what in the Bible's wrong?
Well, you know what? Can I just say one thing? You know, some people say they're Christian, but some of the people who are Christian, they like war, or they like something like that.
So they're not true Christians?
I don't care about what some Christians do. The question I'm asking is, I agree with you. There are some true things in the Bible and some false things in the Bible. We're in agreement. How do you tell the difference?
You just, well, you just know that, like, Jesus was good, because he said you should...
No. You don't just know. There is a pathway to truth. There is a pathway to discover whether or not something's true. And saying you just know it is not included in that pathway. So if I were to tell you anything else, how would you go about figuring out whether it was true or false?
Well, you'd have to, what's an example? Like the age of the Earth?
Sure.
Well, I know, like, scientists found a lot of fossils and things.
We don't determine the age of the Earth with fossils.
But in any case, what you're talking about there is evidence. Okay?
Yeah.
Now let's get away with physical truths about the physical nature of the universe, because that's fairly simple. Despite the fact that your Bible gets a number of things wrong, like whether or not bats are birds and whether or not rabbits chew the cud, I dismiss that as the ignorance of the people who wrote it. And so, by the way, do most Christians, because they recognize there's no way to reconcile this with an all-knowing God. But let's talk about moral things. The Bible is clear that a man having sex with another man is an abomination, yet you disagree with the Bible. I do too.
I don't think they should be so mean to gay people.
I completely agree, but your Bible says that your God says it's an abomination.
Not only that, but you're supposed to stone gay people.
We can probably get out of here in 10 minutes if you want to go for follow-up.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think you should stone gay people.
But the Bible says you're supposed to.
Actually says they're deserving.
I don't believe everything.
Oh, yeah, deserving of professor.
So there's some things in the Bible you believe and some things you don't believe. And I'm asking, I understand your reason or your explanation for why you don't believe them, but you're right here. Oh, you can't see me. So you reject some things in the Bible and accept some other things in the Bible. And somebody else in your church disagrees with you. And they accept some things in the Bible that you reject, and they reject some things that you accept. How do the two of you decide who's actually correct?
I don't know.
Don't you think that's important to find out?
Yeah, like there's Muslims, there's all sorts of different religions.
Well, we're not even talking about
I'm
that.
Just
we're talking
about
in
at
your
the Stone
church.
Church, Austin. I mean, are you saying that everybody there agrees with you that there's nothing wrong with being gay? I'm pretty sure that there are people at Stone Church who would say that the Leviticus passages about it being an abomination for a man to lie with another man is actually the opinion of God. Now, that puts you in disagreement with somebody at your church, hypothetically. How would you go about resolving this? How do you find out who's right?
I don't know.
Okay. Don't you think that's something you should know?
Yeah.
So,
well, maybe you should just make friends with some gay people and see if they're bad people.
What difference does that make? I mean, maybe
to see if it's true that they're an abomination.
Well, no. But the passage means it's an abomination to God, that God thinks it's evil. It doesn't matter to God whether gays are good or not. So you going out and meeting them doesn't tell us anything. You could meet a homosexual who's an axe murderer, and you can meet a homosexual who gives up all their time to charities. But that tells us nothing at all about it, because people aren't all the same.
Okay, so maybe you should look at the other things Jesus said, like love your neighbor, and compare that with Leviticus.
Okay, and so now you've got to, well, first of all, love your neighbor is kind of generic. I mean, I don't know that it necessarily means intercourse. But, you know, saying love your neighbor in one passage and saying kill the people, there's a passage that says that if anybody tries to lead you to another god, including your wife, yours should be the first hand on them to put them to death. So you've got one passage that tells you to kill somebody who leads you to another god, and another passage that tells you to love them. Now, which one do you follow and why?
The love.
Why?
Why?
It's just like an instinct.
Okay. Well, I'll praise you for having instincts that seem to be more moral than the contrary. But it seems to me that if you're just going to go on instinct, why do you believe anything about the Bible or this God or Jesus or whatever if you have given yourself the authority to go through and pick the parts of the book that you instinctively feel are true?
So maybe I should just trust myself, not even listen to the Bible.
Amen.
There you go.
Everybody here is clapping for you, Mark. Everybody. Now, here's the thing. Don't just listen to yourself. Because you can be wrong, I can be wrong, Jen can be wrong. We've all been wrong before. You have to actually make a concerted effort and look at what's going on around you and have conversations with other people. Because how do we decide whether or not we consider something to be moral or immoral? It has nothing to do with what some old book said or somebody else's opinion. It has to do with the consequences of that action and realizing that your actions have impact on other people and their actions have an impact on you. And when those things come in conflict, that's where we make assessments with respect to our values. And
yeah, because when gay people have sex, it doesn't hurt anyone else.
Yes.
Unless like, they hurt each other.
Well, you know, we'll assume it's consensual. I know plenty of people who hurt each other in sex and are really happy about it. But we'll save that for another time. I got to go, Mark. Thanks for the call.
Come to my church sometime.
May 15th, I'll be there.
We really like you.
May 15th. Bye-bye.